wonderful part about CAP is that it was built on love. And I'll tell you the story. A little bit of emotion. The real driving force in this whole organization was a little lady by the name of Monica Kupf, who was born in Finland. She fled the Nazis with planes firing guns at her. And through the escaping process, she managed to pick up her love for animals. And one in particular was named Mutti. And this animal was her love. Well, that transferred to every animal with four legs and birds, you name it. She's very much of a humanitarian. And so when we started Citizens for Animal Protection, we made an awareness in the beginning of the fact there was a need. And the members that came on board had recognized the same need.
Well, they thought I was the crazy cat lady on my block, so, because I had a bunch of cats that I was sponsoring, you know, fostering.
I have a funny story to tell too about my husband, Al, who was very supportive of me with my work with CAP. And he would go with me once in a while up to Austin for some of the hearings on the legislation we were trying to get passed. And they heard the bill, and then they were going around asking, would anyone like to say anything? And they get around to my husband, and he raises his hand, and I'm going, oh my heavens, what in the world is he going to say? He said, you know, my wife has worked so hard on this bill, and I sure hope you senators pass it because it would make my life a whole lot easier.
I adopted my first baby named Daisy from CAP back in about 1992. I started volunteering for the organization back in about the 90s, but I joined the board in about 2018.
Diane called me at work one day and said, Sig, we'd like you to join the board. Got a full-time job, really not looking to get involved, but I tell you what, I'll give it 6 months. If it doesn't work out, no hard feelings either way. She said, okay, here I am, 14 years later, still on the board. So.
When I was asked to be the president, it was because the lady who was president was moving to Dallas. And so I agreed to do it just for a year or two. And that turned into, 15 years?
A lot of people are aware, and a lot of people are not aware, that CAP set the standards really for other shelters to follow, with our spay-neuter being mandatory, with our first adoption screening, and we also beginning working with legislation in 1975 to pass humane statewide legislation. So believing in something is the key, and then you can do almost anything, you know. At that time, and still unfortunately today, there were a lot of strays on the streets of Houston. And we had so many in our homes. We had a lot of foster homes. We would call everyone to come to the mobile adoption center and bring their animals for adoption. And we went every weekend somewhere. But we had crates and pens and water bowls and and tables and everything. And we would go out there every Saturday, every Sunday, and we would hope to get most of the animals adopted. Probably in the beginning of 1981, we had raised $25,000. And I said to the board, okay, it's time to open a shelter. It was hard. It was hard getting there. Yes. It was a long, bumpy road, you know, and beautiful in many ways, meeting so many wonderful people. But it was not an easy journey to get where we got and to where we are today, too.
We got this beautiful design from Dan Boggio with an estimate and a budget, and we thought it was all great, except CAP didn't have any money. It had received a $1.5 million gift from Jane Cizik, and that was enough to pay for the land, and we pledged the land as collateral to build the building. But basically, it was a downturn in the stock market. We didn't know what to do, but we were bound and determined to raise the money, and we did.
You know, when you walk into our facility, it just feels different than perhaps other places that you've come. Everything from the natural light to the high ceilings and the artwork on the walls, to the smiling faces of the people that are truly happy to work at CAP makes this just a great time, a place to come and spend some time and select somebody to take home.
As much as we help the animals, which is our focus really, we help people too. For every animal we help a person.
Right.
And when the people come in crying because they can't, keep their animal, or they're having a problem with it, or their finances have become such that they can't keep their animal, we can step in and do something about that. And that's the wonderful part of it. It really is. That's why we do what we do.
Last year alone, with the help of more than 425 active volunteers, 140 foster families, and partnerships with more than 25 local animal control organizations, CAP took in nearly 5,000 stray, abandoned, lost, and surrendered animals. Most of those found new forever homes. 115 were reunited with their families. One of the coolest things actually is seeing a family reunited with a lost pet. And as soon as the animal sees their owner, the tail starts wagging, or they start jumping towards them, and the people start crying, and that's the best feeling in the world, is reuniting a lost pet with their family.
If I were asked what Monica would say if she saw this facility right now, I don't think I have the words to tell you. I just think you'd look at her. Tears.
When you think about what it costs to run a place like this, and the fact that adoption fees and intake fees barely cover the cost to care for that animal for a few days, let alone the average of 16 days that they spend here. When you think about all those costs, we look to the community, we look to people like you. And without support from people like you, we could not continue to fulfill our mission. On behalf of the Board of Directors, the staff, volunteers, and foster families, and the animals we serve, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.